This is Adam and the Analog, episode 52. Today, we're taking a digital detour to talk about video games that use board game concepts.
Hello and welcome to Adam and the Analog. I'm your host, Harrison Dunn.
And I'm Corey Murphy.
Hey Corey, guess what?
Hi.
I know we're a board gaming podcast, but today we're going to go back to them good old video games because I brought a friend with me.
Hi.
We've got my friend Adam Graf here, the host of Pocketeering, another podcast about video games and Game Boy games.
Hey guys, excited to be here. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Welcome.
So Adam and I met at a local game dev meetup. We just got a chance to have a few drinks and connect, and we exchanged cards. And then months later, I checked my email and was like, hey, we should do something after he reached out. So we're finally doing something. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for taking a digital detour to sort of meet in an overlap of our different domains here.
We never should have called this thing Adam and the Analog.
Yep. Time to end the podcast. Start a new one. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about another crossover between video games and board games. But before we do that, let's get to know Adam a little better. You host the Pocketeering podcast. What's that all about?
Yeah. So the tagline of Pocketeering is very broadly a show about handheld games. In our current era, we're very focused on the Game Boy Color library. So we go through sort of those like late 90s, like Y2K. The Game Boy Color era itself actually is really narrow. It's like just spans a few years because the Game Boy Advance came out so soon after the release of the Game Boy Color. But we also reach backward into the Game Boy library and forward into the Game Boy Advance library. And we are trying to be pretty comprehensive in our coverage. So we're covering the ones that are considered classics. And then a lot of the stuff in the library is also, what you might call licensed shovelware. And we go through some of the bad stuff in that. And we're trying to find any like hidden gems in that area that we can recommend to people. We also find that we make an assessment of like games that we find like unplayable without the use of modern tools, but are actually kind of fun if you abuse like rewind and save states and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I co-host that with my friend Josh. We have new episodes every Tuesday, and that's our show.
Yeah, you definitely had a Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance back in the day. Some good years. You say it was the shortest span of time in there, but it felt like eternity when you were that age, right?
Yeah, well, and the Game Boy Advance had a really long tail. Like the DS was released really soon after the Game Boy Advance came out, but they kept making Game Boy Advance games for another like 5 years after that because they just, I don't know, were not like completely all in on the idea of the DS as a successor. They wanted them to like coexist for a while, but there are like Game Boy Advance games until like 2008 or something like that.
Nintendo's always got some kind of novelty aspect built into all of their consoles where it's like, yeah, I might actually prefer the previous generation because we just forego the second screen. I don't have to worry about tapping on this thing. Just keep it simple.
Well, yeah, that's the tough thing about playing DS games in a modern context. Like a lot of like alternate devices that you might want to play a DS game on do not have a second screen. And like you're just seeing those hit the market now.
So you're joining us for a board gaming podcast, and we will talk about video games, but what kind of board games do you like to play?
Do you roll them dice, Adam?
I did most of my tabletop gaming in college, and then like the few my few years out of college. I was in a couple different regular D&D campaigns. One of them was a short-lived podcast that we had a lot of fun making. I have dipped a toe into development of tabletop games and trading card games, and had a lot of fun doing it, but like not gotten anywhere near publishing like any of the ideas I've worked on. I have a lot of my circles are just like D&D people, so that is like the touch point. And I feel like that, in that area of like tabletop RPGs, that's a lot of people's entry point. And often, people are not, people who aren't like super interested in design like you guys are may not explore beyond like that one system. Um, I have a lot of problems with D&D, like the systems there, so that sort of like drove me away from tabletop gaming after I like made my own system that I liked better and then stopped working on it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair.
yeah, I have my good friend. I have a good friend who is like has like he's become the board game guy. So those are all the presents he gets from everyone he knows for every holiday.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm at his house, he's always pulling out something interesting that I haven't played before. And in town, like I'll go to role play, like I'll see what's new there. Um but I definitely like took a hard turn into like specifically like retro video game development about like 2 or 3 years ago, and I don't do that much board gaming or tabletop gaming on a regular basis since then. So yeah, that's where I'm coming to this from.
Well, then, double thank you for jumping onto a podcast with us.
Well, part of the service that I think your podcast provides is that I can listen to you guys talk about games, and that is like enough for me to like, even if I'm never gonna play them, I can listen to, your recap and listen to you guys talk about it from a design perspective and get a sense of what something is, without having to like, put in the time with a regular group, since I don't have one like you guys do.
Well, this week we're taking you
Oh,
with us, and
thanks.
we're going to get granular. So get ready to talk about page 13 of the rule book of such and such
Right.
game. I'm
I
just
love
kidding.
granular's my middle name. All
Oh,
right.
yes. So you mentioned getting into retro game development, and I know that you've got a game coming out soon. You want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, part of why I started doing Pocketeering is because before that got started, I got really seriously into developing a Game Boy Color game. So I made a game called Gumball and Trick or Treat Land. It's available now in early access, and it's going to be releasing on Steam and other platforms. Um, I just found a publisher. I don't want to say more than that on air since it's a fresh deal, but I'm pretty excited about that. So yeah, I'm in like the homebrew area technically. The game is like made to spec to run on Game Boy Color hardware, but it's going to be available as a digital release too, since most people don't want to go through the steps of like getting it into an actual Game
Mhm.
Boy. But yeah, it's a turn-based RPG in the vein of like Pokemon Gen 2 or Earthbound. And I tried to make it pretty pitch perfect to that like Game Boy Color era of gaming. It's very silly and goofy. The turn-based combat is, I would say, somewhat challenging, but it's not unapproachable to someone who's just sort of casually interested in the form. And yeah, it was a super fun project to work on. It took me about 15 months to develop, and it is now in its earliest phase of release. So if people want to check that out, gumballgame.com is the place to go for that.
We'll be sure to throw a link in the episode description too if you are bad at remembering URLs. Congrats on the publisher.
Thank you. Yeah,
Were,
I'm
were you
excited.
That's
saying
huge.
Gumball in Trick or Treat Land or Gumball and Trick or Treat Land?
Gumball in Trick or Treat
In
Land.
Trick or Treat Land.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
All right. So today's topic is video games that are influenced by board games. So we've each brought a paltry list of two games that we want to talk about that influence or borrow from or kind of feel like board games. Something around there. We can take it however we'd like. Now, Corey, I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you get a first player rule for us this week?
Yeah, I just typed one in. Did you see that?
Oh, okay. Let's see. The
New
first
rule.
player rule is guest goes first. Okay, so who's the guest here? I think that's Adam. Adam, you want to start us
Hello.
off and share a video game that you're a fan of?
Sure. So this I'll start with one, and I realized after I picked this game that this is a slight break in form because I do think this game is interesting. I don't recommend it to everybody. So the theme of the two games I picked is offshoots of Mario Party, right? Because Mario Party I think is like a lot of people's touchstone for like a video game that is based on what would ostensibly be like a board game system. These are
Mhm.
two not exactly offshoots of Mario Party, but sort of related games that use a similar systems, but maybe people are a little bit less familiar with. So my first game I picked is Sonic Shuffle, which is Sega's answer to a Mario Party. So have you guys heard of this game at all?
I have heard of it, but I never got a chance to play it because it's a little bit older, right?
Yeah, this is a Dreamcast game. Uh, so this came out in 2000. So the first Mario Party comes out in 1998, and it takes Sega, I guess, 2 years to get their act together and get something out. It was made by the credit is just developed by Sega. It's pretty well on record that they got help from Hudson Soft, who made Mario Party as a
Mhm.
subsidiary of Nintendo. So they're I would love to see what their sort of legal situation was at the time, working with both Nintendo and Sega competing at the same time.
Traders.
Yeah. So Sonic Shuffle is interesting. It is if you the easiest way to visualize it is like think about a Mario Party game that is in the Sonic universe, but there's like a lot that's mechanically different about it. Um, it takes some of the formula of Mario Party and like has an interesting spin on it, but it creates as many problems as it solves in doing so, I would say. So you move around, there's a bunch of different boards, and you move around them and they are dynamic, some more so than others. So they when you land on event spaces, they have parts that move around. And a lot of what you're doing is traversing the board to get to like very specific spots. Instead of collecting stars like you would in Mario Party, you're collecting gems. And the thing that you kind of notice the first time you play this game is the campaigns, I guess. You can play with multiple players, but you're very much like following story objectives even as you play together. It is PvP. I will say every time I've ended up actually playing this game in real life, it has ended up the CPUs are so hard that we have ended up just doing co-op against them by the end of each campaign. Which is like I think that's one of like the main design issues with the game. One interesting thing that it does, so instead of dice-based movement system, it's card-based. The game gives each player a like somewhat randomized deck that they're drawing their like movement cards from throughout the game. And the Dreamcast has like a little screen on the controller, so you can see your own hand,
That's
but
right.
nobody else can see it. So it's like which is like the totally ahead of its time Dreamcast thing that you don't really see again until the Wii U, another, I guess, arguably failed system.
Yeah. Screen controllers just don't have it good.
It's a cool idea though.
Yeah. And then so another thing that differentiates it from Mario Party is you don't have as many mini games. There are some events where like something will happen on the board and then there's a boulder and everyone has to mash buttons to run from it or something. But those are secondary to battles. There's like turn-based combat with enemies throughout. And the combat system, I think, is also maybe one of the weaker parts of the design. You use your cards again, and it's like it's asymmetrical. So you play your card to do like a number amount of damage to your opponent. The only stat your opponent really has is HP. They just show their number, and you are like playing your cards on your turn to deplete their HP, and then they are attacking you until you hit 0 rings. And then if you get hit at that point, the battle's over and you can't win. There's no like huge penalty for losing battles, except sometimes you need to win battles to progress to get the gem, which is like the objective of the game itself. And it can be pretty frustrating because you deplete cards out of your hand as you like move up to the boss, and if you don't have enough to defeat them by the time you get to them, you still have to sit through the battle and just lose.
Yeah, I couldn't find a whole lot of information prior to this recording, but the Wikipedia page calls out Jet Set Radio as a similar art style, and so I was immediately on board. Good old cell shading.
Yeah. The other thing, what one other tiny thing that is interesting, on your turn, instead of using one of your own cards to move, you can hit a button to pick a random card to play from somebody else's hand, which is just chaos. And it's like you really can like target other people in a way that is like, can be really mean sometimes. There's no like strategically good reason to do it, except if everyone gangs up on someone, you can deplete their hand and give them fewer options, just I don't know, because you think they're winning or something. But
Yeah.
again, since the matches don't tie up all that quickly, it's like, you're just prolonging your own torture if you elect to do that. So I don't know. Yes, so that is Sonic Shuffle for the Dreamcast. If you play it on, despite the fact that you can't like see your hand, it's a fine experience to play on other devices too. It'll show you your cards on your turn specifically.
So the first game I want to talk about is something that just came out this month. It's a really recent release that I've been kind of excited about. And this is a game that blends board game elements and video game elements from all over the place. And when I describe it to you, it's either going to sound like the perfect game or complete nonsense. So this game is called Drop Duchy on PC, and it is a deck building roguelike tactical combat RPG resource management Tetris game.
All right.
So the core gameplay loop is you are dropping polyomino tiles. Yeah, there's different shapes than just the four-piece tiles. You're dropping polyominoes on a Tetris-like board, but each of these polyominoes can be a terrain type like farms or woods or rivers, or they can be buildings. And then once you've filled your board, you have to complete a tactical battle against another army whose pieces have also been dropping in on your board while you play. So you're trying to complete lines to get resources for progression between your runs. You're trying to make sure that your buildings and your armies are properly strengthened by the placement, relative placement of their abilities. You're trying to make sure that your enemies' buildings don't get those bonuses, and then also just get as many tiles onto the board as possible. So when you go to that second half of a like little tactical combat, you can actually come out on top.
That sounds sweet.
It is absolutely absurd.
There's gravity. They're all like falling from the sky like Tetris pieces.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So there
Oh,
is a
cool.
timing element to it too. Yep. So yeah, it's got a little bit of the classic video game. I mean, you got Tetris right there in it, but then the tile placement elements and the just plethora of information that you're trying to juggle as you're going forward makes it almost feel a little board gamey too, despite strongly living in the video game space. So this one just came out. There's a free demo last I checked, just earlier today. So hopefully that's still live when you go check it out. Sorry, I just clicked while I'm doing things here.
Now
Not supposed
it
to do
looks
that.
to me it looks to me like it's not real time. So the pieces are just kind of floating around until you submit the move. Is that right?
No, as the longer you hold it, it will start moving down
Oh,
ever
it
so
will.
slightly. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I got
So
it.
it gives you plenty of time to think it out. I never felt super time pressured,
Gotcha.
but yeah.
But you can't just wait forever. Now, can you do that thing where you slide a piece into a notch where
Yep.
you have to like drop? Yeah, you can. Okay.
Yep. Definitely. Yep. You can definitely do
The
that.
classic
And
Tetris
then
move. Tetris move.
the cards that you unlock between runs are actually different tiles. So every card is a tile that goes into your deck too. So you can kind of influence the different types of tiles that are coming out as you're playing.
Nice. Well, that
Yeah.
looks sweet. And I probably didn't need to know about that. I don't have a whole lot of time for that right now.
Yeah. So that is my first pick, Drop Duchy. Go check it out. I think it's $15.
My first pick is Hexarchy, the 4X deck builder. And this is basically like a Civ Lite. I think people compare it to Civilization 4. And graphics wise, it's kind of that era, of that ilk. But we're looking at a top down 4X game where you're exploring and building on hex pieces on the board. And you do it using the same kinds of tech trees from the Sid Meier's Civilization games. but the powers are represented by cards, and the cards have a cost in what's like hammers is like the resource in this game. There are other resources that you can harvest and trade with other players or computers, and some cards have alternate costs, of course. But the hook here is like because it's a deck builder, you're adding cards to your deck, and that comes in the form of like if you play the agriculture card, that opens up a tree of possibilities of like which card you add next in the sequence. And so as you play the game, and these games can go really long. This one tends to be on the shorter side. You can finish a match in like an hour or less. You're diluting your deck. Obviously, that's the big hook of deck builder games. And so you have to choose kind of which ones you have to kind of stem from your deck, and you kind of forego those tech trees for the rest of the game once you've sort of satisfied your need for whatever they give you. But for me, this game is perfect because Civilization anything 1 through 7, we have 7 now, right?
Yeah, 7.
They just blow my mind. They're games that I want to play, I want to like, and I want to understand. But the tutorial only like scratches the surface, and by the time you get done with it, there's so much more you have to research and learn about in those games, and I'm always overwhelmed.
Can you play this game in under 6 hours?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said, it's like an hour or less. Can I play it in
Oh,
under
wow.
6 hours personally? Yeah, I think so. I think I knock it out. I
Awesome.
need a cup of coffee.
Yeah, you told me about this one last week, right before we signed off, and since then, I think I've seen you online playing it almost every day or close to it.
Well, I had to do my research for the podcast.
Oh yeah, obviously.
And
Yeah.
it's for the people. But yeah, I've been playing this one and my other pick, which I'll not spoil right now. I should mention real quick the asymmetry aspect of this is a thing. As it is in other Civilization games, you choose a culture or a society or whatever, and then they have their unique cards added to the deck. So
Oh.
there's a lot of different choices there and a lot of different things to explore. But it will feel a little samey if you're used to the depth of Civilization, which 6 hours. It's a long game. There's got to be a lot of choices in there. This one's much lighter, for better or worse, and that is Hexarchy.
Quick aside that you might have to cut out, but it is on daily deal right now, 60% off for $8. So.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, on Steam.
Gotta get it.
Yep, Mac or PC too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, that is once around the table. Adam, you want to take us back with the second round?
Yes. I'll say you said deck building. I realize I should have said maybe this will endear me to your listeners. I do love Slay the Spire. I know you guys are big into that.
Oh, okay. He's one of us. Great.
Just in case they were like, oh, who's this non-board game poser over here? I know Slay the Spire is not a board game, but you guys.
It is now.
It is now. Yeah.
Oh, that's
really good
right.
one, too.
And you guys were talking about that too. And sorry,
Yeah.
I won't pull us further off track. So the other game, again, Mario Party adjacent. Have you guys heard of this game, Fortune Street, or the unlocalized version would be called Itadaki Street?
What?
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So
I vaguely remember this one.
So this is I had thought that this was inspired by Mario Party. This series predates Mario Party actually by a lot. So the version that I'm familiar with that I am going to talk about is the Wii version, which is one of the only ones in the series that was localized. So this is mostly Japan only. But on Wii, this is called Fortune Street in the US, or if you're in the EU, you might know it as Boom Street. This is the 10th installment of 12 in the current day. So this is a series that's really popular in Japan, but really has not caught on over here in the same way. This originally came out on the Famicom in 1991. So it's been around for a minute. And it was created by the developer of Dragon Quest, actually. So the playable characters are all Dragon Quest characters, except they usually license a second franchise. So there are ones that are Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy characters moving around the board. This one, Fortune Street for the Wii, that was released in 2007, they license Mario characters. So it is half Dragon Quest characters, half you can also select Mario and Luigi and Peach and everyone
Naturally.
from like the Mario Party cast and play against like Platypunk and Slimes and all of your Dragon Quest guys. So
Mhm.
that in and of
I'll
itself is
take it
just
back. I don't know what game I was thinking that you were talking about, but this is not it. This sounds way better.
Mhm.
so this is Mario Party meets Monopoly with a fully functional like stock market. So it's wild, and I do actually recommend. Again, these games will not go on for 6 hours generally. They'll usually go 2 or 3. It's like Monopoly, so you'll want to sit down with your trusted group of friends and know that this is what you're in for, and know that somebody is gonna bankrupt everybody else in a way that might cause some hurt feelings. But it is really fun. So the object of the game is to accrue a certain minimum net worth, and so you're getting money, but you have money in stocks and you have liquidity. So each different board has like you need to get $20,000, or you need to get, or I think G is the currency. I don't know if it stands for gold or whatever, but each different board has a different setting. There are a bunch of different boards like Mario Party. It's dice-based movement. So you're moving around the board, and you get a bonus, like a level up. So like passing go in Monopoly every time you go around. But as you go around the board, you have to collect 4 different collectibles. So there's suits, just a club, a spade, a heart, and a diamond. You have to get all 4 every time around the board in order to get your bonus. And like Mario Party, you can take branching paths. You can select anytime there's a fork in the road which path you want to take to most efficiently get everything. Like Monopoly, you're buying property as you go. So instead of colors, like in Monopoly, everything is divided into districts. And then where the stock element comes in is you can buy stock in any district, no matter whether you own it or not. So as the value goes up, your net worth goes up. As people level up and buy different shops and get monopolies and stuff in each district, there's they show you like an indication at the end of everyone's turn, like where every stock has gone. And because it is, the stock market on a certain level is gambling, right? You can sometimes get rewarded for playing like totally weird, like strategies that don't seem like they would make any sense. Like very often, if you're playing risk averse and you're not buying that much stock, you will end up losing to someone who just like randomly like bought stock in the right district at the right time. And those matches are actually really fun to see them unfold, because somebody like can go from last place to first place within a certain number of turns, but it is because of a decision that they actually made. And when that happens, usually the game wraps up pretty quickly after that, so you're not sitting for that many turns, like again failing while you're watching somebody else continue to succeed. um so it kind of handles that better. um that there are some mini games, but most of the mini games are largely randomized. There's a scratch card that comes up when you land on a certain kind of a space, and it's like everybody is sharing the same scratch card, and you're trying to get like 4 or 5 in a row. You get a randomized effect every time you scratch, but you can also block people on the scratch card, so that in itself is like another layer to what's going on.
Tactical
And
gambling.
yeah, exactly. And then the CPUs are also pretty smart in Fortune Street. So I've also played in games where all of a sudden we decide to change our objective. It's like 3 humans and 1 computer, and we're like, all right, let's all just gang up on the computer now. Like our new self-decided objective is like, let's see if we can do this, because it's, I don't know, it's like even more so than playing chess against the computer. It seems like when there's stock trading involved, it's making decisions that seem totally baffling, like they make no sense, and then all of a sudden it's like paying off, and you're like, wait a minute. And I don't know. I'm sure there are people who are like great at strategizing, but if you're um I don't know, of average intelligence when it comes to stock trading like I am, you're just like totally mystified like watching a computer try to do it. And But it's great. It's still a really fun game to play, even if you're just sort of like making decisions randomly for the first few turns. You can sort of build on like a strategy of investment over time. And it's pretty fun. It's really, I mean, it ends up, I think, solving some of the problems of Monopoly weirdly, and like adding enough depth to keep it
Mm.
interesting.
Nice.
Hmm.
Fortune
That does
Street.
sound kind of sweet. Too bad it's on the
Yeah.
Wii.
Yeah,
Right.
that's that's the tricky thing, but it doesn't use motion controls. So again,
Okay.
if people have means of playing it on another device, it plays relatively well on other platforms too. Fortune Street,
It
2007.
it initially seems wonky to have the Mario Party cast next to the Dragon Quest cast, but I understand in Japan, Dragon Quest is like huge, right?
Oh yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
a
Yep.
giant? Yeah.
It's like a
So
new
I
Dragon
don't
Quest
recognize
game
any of.
comes out, take off of school kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. Well, so that's actually a pretty good segue because you touched on some topics that I think I can connect these tissues to. So my second pick, my final pick, is for something that Corey actually alluded to earlier, and that is Civilization 4. So Civilization, that's the big grand strategy 4X games. There's a bunch of them. Seventh one just came out this year. I think the board game audience is pretty familiar with that, or that it feels pretty board gamey. But the design of Civilization 4 specifically was really intriguing. I listened to an interview with Soren Johnson, one of the lead designers on Civilization 4. He was on the Think Like a Game Designer podcast with Justin Gary. And he talked how specifically Civilizations 4 design borrowed heavily from board games when it came to just the transparency of information. That's
Mm,
when they really focused on making sure that you can see exactly like how much population you're going to get each round, how many of each resource that you're generating, and they really focused on making the game as transparent as possible, so that if you wanted to look into it and you wanted to plan, you had the option to do so. And a lot of modern board games, especially heavy strategy games, really lean into that. The the Vital Lacerdas of the world all love those big crunchy Euro style games where there's very little to no randomness except for player randomness, what your opponents are doing and how they're affecting the board.
mm,
Uh, so if you look back on it, there's really a lot of that same DNA in Civilization and how that kind of has grown since then. And looking back at it, I went back and I started playing Civilization 4. That was a
mm.
mistake. Shouldn't have done that.
Damn, Harrison. When you said Civ 4, I was just thinking he's smart.
Yeah.
Those game
that
those games are.
that's the main reason I like to have a
Oh,
podcast, so I can
yeah.
feel smart, right?
Weird brag, Harrison. Just
No, no. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think Civilization games are very close to those board game type things, and they even have a Civilization board game. But I really like that idea that they've been borrowing from or influenced by just the way that information is presented to players in a board game in a physical space.
That series has just been like so like crazy far reaching. Like that is
Oh
one
yeah,
of those games that like I'll be talking to someone who it doesn't seem like they game at all, and then I'll find out that they play Civilization.
yep.
And that just like I think it just speaks to like how strong the overall design is.
So to segue that or connect that back to Fortune Street, the way that you were talking about it made it sound like there is a lot more information just out there and available to players compared to uh, things like Mario Party, especially with that stock market. So you
Oh
have a
yeah.
lot more of information that you're looking at and considering when you're making any given action.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I don't know that I need to say much more about Civilization 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 or 7 or whichever one. 8. This will be around, right? That'll happen eventually.
Yeah.
Civilization 4, that is my second pick.
Real quick, is this like the highest regarded Civilization game? I'm curious as to why you picked 4 over the latest one.
4 was the one that I specifically listened to the designer talk about and how
Okay.
it was kind of a turning point for the series. I think 4 was also the one that got really popular. Uh, like the jump from 3 to 4, but instead of 4 to 5, I think was really huge.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
one I hear referenced the most.
Hmm.
And speaking of, okay, Civilization board games, there's A New Dawn, and then there's the other one. I think it's just called Civilization. But an even better Civilization board game, Through the Ages. And
It's very
it's
good
kind
too.
of eerie how similar it is. It's kind of a ripoff in a lot of ways, but great game. And then comes full circle because there's a great digital version of that game. So board game made after computer game made back into a computer game. So there we are. Okay, my last pick is a brand new one, and I almost feel like I snatched this one from Harrison because I think he's the one that got me into this game in the first place. Have you played Backpack Hero yet, Harrison? Or are you just
Yeah. Oh
interested in
yeah.
it? Okay,
No, I played it.
yeah, this game's sweet. It is kind of an odd theme. You're like this mouse with a backpack, and you go through a dungeon delve, roguelike style. And on each of those delves, you just start acquiring new items to put in your backpack. And when you do combats, you have 4 actions to take, and each of those actions is like clicking on an item in your backpack. Some of them take 0, some of them take 1, some of them take 2 of your whatever the action points are called, energy. And then they activate for whatever ability they have. It's pretty simple. But the cool board game-esque part of this one is this polyomino adjacency puzzle that's going on because you have limited space, which is kind of I feel like it's almost a joke about how Diablo games were always a pain in the butt when you got a new item. You had to like shuffle everything around. But it plays to the mechanics of this game because when you have things that are next to one another, they affect each other in different ways. Some things have floating, they get stuck on the top of your inventory. Some things are heavy, they get stuck on the bottom. Things count like the number of spaces above them. Sun is an item you can keep in your backpack that powers adjacent items around it. And it's really cool because you generate these different items depending on what things appear to you in like your first few rounds of combat. And you're like, okay, cool. I guess I'm going to go sun route this time and, start finding items for that. Having not gotten too deep in the game, I don't know much about the city building part of it. There's something about that at the end of each run. You can add more to the city. Harrison, maybe you can touch on that.
The amount of touching on that I was going to do is just that was the part that turned me off from the game.
Oh, okay.
I really liked the dungeon exploration. It's just turn-based combat, and you
Yeah.
are building your suite of abilities by arranging these pieces in your backpack. You definitely need to do like this little village city building aspect to progress in the story, and I just wasn't into that at the time, so I did 4 or 5 runs. But looking back at screenshots now, there's some absolutely crazy stuff in these screenshots, and I think I need to go back. There's like a character who is trying to connect all these different pieces with like wiring and logic in their backpack. There's someone who has 2 backpacks. I mean, that's got heroes and it's got backpacks, so it's backpack hero.
Yeah. It's a little discouraging to hear about the village thing because that was my initial impression too, and I was hoping that I would eventually buy into it.
Have you tried this one, Adam? Have you heard of this?
No,
Okay.
I haven't. It really sounds interesting.
Yeah, if you're into the roguelike games, this is a new approach to it that I haven't seen yet. There's tons of deck builders and smash 'em ups and stuff, but this one's like, this is cool. There's nothing out there like it.
Yeah, a lot of tetrominos going on today
Yeah.
in the picks too. Yeah, I love that.
Call back to board games. I'm thinking like Feast for Odin. There's this nice
Oh, yeah.
tetromino polyomino puzzle going on in that game. Obviously handled in a different way, but it gives me the same kind of excitement when I'm getting that right arrangement that may or may not exist. You might just be seeking it for a really long time and not advancing your quest, but if that's how your brain works, it's not real time, so you can have at it. And that is Backpack Hero from 2023. You can find that one on Steam.
All right. Well, that wraps up another list. We got 6 new items on a list of uh, loosely grouped video games influenced by board games or vice versa, right? We just like talking about games, guys. I don't think the list matters that much. So we've got Adam's picks. We have Sonic Shuffle and Fortune Street. We've got Corey's picks, Hexarchy and Backpack Hero. And then we've got my picks, Drop Duchy and Civilization 4.
That's a fine list.
Adam, it has been a pleasure. It is tradition to close out each episode of Adamantly Analog by talking about non-board game things in our lives. Is there anything you'd like to share? Any books, shows, movies, food?
Oh, wow. Yes, I made a good meatloaf lately. I did meatloaf is one of those recipes that there's like a bajillion different ways to make it, and I love to cook, but I am loath to like go specifically by a recipe the first time I try something usually. So this is like meatloaf iteration 3, and I think I finally got it. A lot of garlic. It was yummy. It turned out good.
Meatloaf is one of those things that a good meatloaf is incredible, and I just fear a bad meatloaf, so I haven't tried making one.
Yeah, bad meatloaf is like I picture a cartoon drawing of like a school cafeteria tray with like some mystery meatloaf on it, and
Yep, yeah.
it can go wrong in that way. Yeah.
When I worked at a Japanese restaurant, if you're familiar with umami in
Yeah.
Madison, The chef there, when I worked there, liked to just make random things on the side, but one of his favorite things was to make a meatloaf, and he would take he would never serve it to anyone except for the employees, but it was I think it was usually bulgogi beef ground up and then Korean barbecue mixed in with all that and some scallions afterwards, and it was just
That sounds
the
really
most
good.
incredible thing ever. Yeah. Yep. So
That's
it was a
always
good
fun
time.
when if you work at a kitchen when that's cool with you, like for staff meal, like going off menu and just
Yeah.
making some monstrosity. I used to I flipped burgers my freshman year of college at a place on campus, and we would always make these just grotesque calzones. We would stuff pizza dough with like whatever, and sometimes throw them in the fryer. And yeah, those were some times.
No, yeah. We had a famed thing that we would try to make every time. Gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it now, but it was always you would take like a bratwurst and wrap it in a pizza and then a tortilla and lots of nacho cheese or something like that. But it was basically trying to get everything in the cafeteria instead of throwing it away, roll it into one giant thing. I think they called it a Schmeckeldorf, just a nonsense word that they throw it on there. So, Pete,
Nice.
if you're listening and you remember what that is, let me know.
Did you guys ever have the bagel cheddarwurst at lunchtime at school? That was the best day ever. Bagel cheddarwurst. Maybe that's just a like Milwaukee area thing, but
Yeah, I don't know
I
that
feel
one.
like all the kids around here, all the '90s kids know about that. It's a dog wrapped in a bagel like substance, and cheese just squirted in there and all cooked together. Ooh, getting excited just thinking about it. I gotta make some of those myself. Bring back some lunch foods.
Yeah, I am regretting not eating dinner before starting this. So, yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for joining us on this episode of Adamantly Analog, a digital detour. You want to shout out your game one more time and maybe let folks know where they can find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My game is Gumball in Trick or Treat Land. Please wishlist it on Steam. You can check out the project at gumballgame.com. There's a trailer there. There's a 1 hour long demo that is free that you can play in your browser if you just want to see what it's all about. Guys, if you want to, you've heard me talk in this episode. If you'd like to hear me talk at great length about the Game Boy Color, you can listen to the Pocketeering podcast wherever you find podcasts. And I am at Exquisite Laundry Pet on socials. Instagram and YouTube are the main ones right now. And yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
You want to give us an outro? Just make something up. How do you do your outro?
Usually Josh says something mean about me. So
Oh, get him
Okay.
back. This is payback.
Your hair looks excellent. Grr.
no.
You
Is
don't
that
want to
what
retaliate
I'm
against
gonna say?
Josh. He
Yeah.
can't fight back now.
No, I'm in too good a mood.
Good. Adam and the Analog is Corey Murphy and Harrison Dunn. Original themes and bumper music by Corey Murphy. Thank you to Adam Graf of the Pocketeering Podcast and Gumball in Trick or Treat Land for joining us this week. Reach us at adamandtheanalog@gmail.com. Next time.